everybody. If you are joining us via YouTube, welcome to PG Youth. If you're in the room, you've been here for a little while. Welcome still. All right. So we have been speaking for the past couple of weeks about an individual in the Bible whose name is Joshua. He has a book of the Bible named after him that is Joshua. Very good. All right. Just making sure you're following through. Okay. So we first learned about Joshua. He showed up as a military individual. Moses was holding his arms up, remember? And as long as the arms were up, Joshua and the team were winning. The arms went down, they started losing, all right? So then Joshua was a spy, right? And he went into the land of Canaan, and he went in with 10 or 11 other guys. And so 12 of them went in. They came out. How many of them said that the land was good? Two. How many said the land was good, but we can't take it? 10, all right? And so because of that, the Israelites had to wander around in the desert for 40 years. And so now all the people that followed the 10 have all died except for Joshua and Caleb. And now they are back at the point to where they're going to cross over to the river. So last week we talked about there was a woman in the city of Jericho. Her name was, do you remember what her name was? R-A-H-A-B. Rahab was her name, all right? And so she kept 2 spies in her house. She hid them up on the roof. She hung a scarlet cord out the window. And remember, she made a promise to them that I will protect you guys and get you out of here if in return, when you guys come back, you protect me and my family and everybody that's in my house. And so they made an agreement. And so the guys left. They hid out in the woods for 3 days. And then they got back to Joshua and they went in. And this time the spies came back to the children of Israel and said, what? It's good. All we got to do is go take it, right? So now we are at that point where it is time to prepare and to cross over the River Jordan. All right, so we are going to be in Joshua chapter 3 and chapter 4 tonight. So we're going to read some verses. We'll stop and talk about them. We're going to skip through and read some verses a little bit later down. We'll jump into the next chapter, and hopefully I can put this all together where it makes sense. So God gave the children of Israel a command, and that command was what? To go, right? To go into the land of Canaan. This is the land that I have given you. All you have to do is go. All right, when he brought them out of Israel, they got to the Red Sea, and what happened in the Red Sea? It parted, right? And they walked across. So the Israelites are used to seeing miracles from God. They saw all the plagues in Egypt. When they left, God parted the Red Sea. They walked across on dry ground. And now they're heading towards the promised land. 40 years later, now they're back to where they should be. All right, so we're in Joshua chapter 3, verse 1. It says, Joshua started early the next morning and left Acacia Grove with all the Israelites and went as far as the Jordan and stayed there before crossing. After 3 days, the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, when you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God carried by the Levitical priests, you must break camp and follow it. But keep a distance of about 1,000 yards between yourselves and the ark. Don't go near it so that you see the way to go, for you haven't traveled this way before. Okay? So we start off again. We're back with the children of Israel, and they have now been given another command. What is this command? Follow the Ark of the Covenant, all right? Just like Indiana Jones. We're going to follow the Ark of the Covenant, all right? So they are following the Ark of the Covenant. How far away are they supposed to stay from the Ark? 1,000 yards. How far is that?
That's 10 football fields.
That is 10 football fields. How many yards are in a mile? 1,760. 1,760 yards in a mile. So if they are to stay 1,000 yards away from the ark, how far are they? Approximately a half mile. Okay? Technically about 900 yards would be a half mile. All right, so we're close. All right? I didn't learn your distances, your tables, all of that. All right, so they're supposed to stay about a half mile away from the ark. Because the ark is going to lead the people. So they've got to be where they can see it, but not get close to it. Why is that? What is the Ark of the Covenant? Anybody know? It is the representation of God to them. Okay? It was a box that had some important things in it that meant things to the children of Israel, and it was a box that represented the presence of God. It represented the Spirit of God. And there is an account in the Bible where the ark was about to fall, and this dude who wasn't responsible for touching it reached up and grabbed it to keep it from falling, and he dropped dead right there on the spot. Okay, because the Ark of the Covenant was recognized as something that was holy. It was the form of God. It was the representation of God that was there with the children of Israel. So it is important to understand that they are given a command to follow the ark because they don't know where they're going. They've never been this way before. They have been commanded to follow God. All right? So we get to verse 5. So again, they've been given a command. Verse 5, Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves because the Lord will do wonders among you tomorrow. Then he said to the priests, take the Ark of the Covenant and go on ahead of the people. So they carried the Ark of the Covenant and went ahead of them. The Lord spoke to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, so they will know that I will be with you just as I was with Moses. Command the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach at the edge of the waters of the river Jordan, to stand in it. All right? So, Joshua now gives the command to the people, and he says to consecrate yourselves. What does that mean? It's a big word. It's a theological word, Bible word. What does it mean to consecrate? What do you think it means? You don't have to be right, just throw something out. What do you think it means to consecrate yourself? To prepare yourself. That is exactly right. Okay? To consecrate yourself means to prepare yourself and to set yourself apart and set yourself aside for a specific work. Okay? When God calls us to consecrate ourselves, like the children of Israel were called here to consecrate themselves, it means to get all the stuff out of your life that is causing a problem between you and God. It's to clean yourself out, to sterilize everything so that you get into a right relationship with God, so that you hear from God, and you every time when you see God do something, you know it's God that's doing it. When you hear God speak, you know it's God that's speaking, because there's nothing in there muddying the waters. There's nothing in there that's messing up what you hear. There's nothing in there that's messing up what you see, because you are in the right relationship with God. You have prepared your heart to hear from God. You have prepared your heart to see from God. It is always important as a Christian to keep ourselves in the right relationship with God so that we can hear Him and we can see Him. And when we see God do something, you don't just chalk it up to chance. You don't just chalk it up to luck. You chalk it up to the fact that God stepped in and did something miraculous. In this case, He's about to do something pretty miraculous. All right? Let's look at verses 9 through 17. It says, then Joshua told the Israelites, come closer and listen to the words of the Lord your God. He said, you will know that the living God is among you, and that He will certainly dispossess you from the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites, when the ark of the covenant of the Lord of the earth goes ahead of you into the Jordan. Now choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one man from each tribe. When the feet of the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, come to rest in the Jordan's waters, its waters will be cut off, and the water flowing downstream will stand up in mass. All right, so one time already the Israelites have already seen God part the Red Sea, right? And they walked across on dry ground, right, when they left from Egypt. Well, God said, I've showed you once I can part the water. I'm going to show you again that I'm going to part the water. And so the command is follow the Ark of the Covenant and tell the guys that are carrying the Ark, when you get to the Jordan, just walk on in. I'm going to go over here, there's nobody over here. So like this is the water's edge. Just walk on in. And when all of the dudes that are carrying the ark, when their feet get wet, the water's going to stop. And it's just going to back up and stand up like a wall. It's just going to hang out there and stop flowing. All right? Kind of cool. Let's keep on reading. Verse 14, it says, when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carried the ark of the covenant ahead of the people. Now the Jordan overflows its banks throughout the harvest season, but as soon as the priests carrying the ark reached the Jordan, their feet touched the water at its edge, and the water flowing downstream stood still, rising up in a mass that extended as far as Adam, a city next to Zarethan. The water flowing downstream into the Sea of Arabah, the Dead Sea, was completely cut off, and the people crossed opposite of Jericho. The priests carrying the ark of the Lord's covenant stood firmly on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel crossed on dry ground until the entire nation had finished crossing the Jordan River. The entire nation of people walk across the Jordan River on dry ground, while the priests stand in the middle of what was the riverbed on dry ground. Now, how big was the river? Like, what's God really doing here? Or is he like, is this like Mulberry Creek? What are we talking about? Is it the Chattahoochee? How big is the river? All right. At this point in time, give me your estimate. How wide do you think this river was at the place that they crossed? Just give me a thought, a projection.
About a mile across.
Mile across wasn't quite that far. The Jordan is actually not a very big river. I'll give you that as a hint. It's only about 100 feet across. Not, see, I just crossed my blue line. But that's all right, both of those kids are mine, so that's all right, they live in my house. All right, the Jordan is only about 100 feet wide, okay? This room, to give you an idea, from the edge of this stage right here to that back wall back there is about 50 feet. So it's about 2 of these rooms wide. How deep do you think it was? I will give you a hint. It's not that deep.
Trying to think it's just rooms. Like, the roof would be the ground level down.
Okay? Not quite that deep. How high is the basketball goal? 10 feet. All right, there you go. The Jordan is about 10 feet deep at the spot where Jericho is. It's not all that big, right? You're walking across 100 feet, 10 feet deep. Here's the cool thing, though, that you have to understand about this time of year and the Jordan. So the Jordan during flood stage runs very, very fast. It's not just how deep and wide it is, it's almost like a whitewater course. So a few years ago, there was a professional swimmer who attempted during flood season to swim across the Jordan from at Jericho, where they went across, even though it was only 100 feet. The water was moving so fast, he attempted several times and never made it across. All right, so it's not always the size of this body of water, but the impressive thing that God did was he stopped these waters that would be crazy rushing fast normally, where it's one of those things where you just drop something in it and it, float on down. It's that type of moving water. But not only did God hold it back, the other impressive thing is they walked across on dry ground. Water's been moving through here. Y'all seen like the creek bed dry up. There's still mud down there, like a couple of weeks after it rains. There's still mud there. There's no more running water, but the ground's still wet. Not this ground. They walk across on dry ground. See, here's the thing that's impressive about that, and the thing that you have to understand about that is when God provides something for you, God provides totally. He doesn't just provide a little bit. He doesn't just provide just enough to get you through. God provides totally. He totally protected the Israelites in walking across on dry ground. All right, let's keep reading. So far, we have prepared ourselves. We've been given a command. We have prepared ourselves. We have now seen God work. And now something else is about to happen. Chapter 4, verse 1. It says, after the entire nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord spoke to Joshua, choose 12 men from the people, one from each tribe, and command them to take 12 stones from this place in the middle of the Jordan where the priests are standing, carry them with you and set them down at the place where you spend the night. So Joshua summoned the 12 men he had selected from the Israelites, one man from each tribe, and he said to them, go across the ark of the Lord your God in the middle of the Jordan. Each of you lift a stone onto his shoulder, one for each of the Israelite tribes, so that this will be a sign among you in the future when your children ask, what do these stones mean to you? You should tell them the waters of the Jordan were cut off in front of the ark of the Lord's covenant when it crossed the Jordan. Therefore, these stones will always be a memorial for the Israelites. So, we're going to skip down to verse 17, Mr. Nick. Read this. It says, so Joshua commanded the priests, come up from the Jordan, and when the priests carrying the ark of the Lord's covenant came up out of the middle of the Jordan, and their feet stepped out on solid ground, the waters of the Jordan resumed their course, flowing over the banks as before. The people came up from the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and camped at Gilgal on the eastern limits of Jericho. Then Joshua set up in Gilgal the 12 stones that had been taken from the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, in the future, when your children ask their fathers, what is the meaning of these stones, you should tell your children, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground, for the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan before you until you had crossed over, just as the Lord your God had done in the Red Sea, which he dried up before us until we had crossed over. This is so that all the people of the earth may know that the Lord's hand is mighty, and so that you may always fear the Lord your God. That fear means respect the Lord your God. So God gave them a sign, and then out of respect of that sign and out of respect of the power that God demonstrated by parting the waters and having them walk across on dry ground, they then took 12 stones out of the water and basically built an altar. They built a memorial. This is the point of the lesson this morning. Finally, we get to this point. Building of a memorial. What is a memorial for? What's it there for?
To represent something.
To represent something, okay? What else?
To honor and recognize someone
To honor or recognize someone
or something.
or something, okay? So that when people later on come up, they can be reminded of something that usually is good, right? You usually are trying to remind somebody of something that was good. My question to you is this. For the Israelites, when they came up out of the River Jordan, they built a memorial to God to be reminded that they walked across on dry ground. So here's my question to you. What memorials do you have in your life to remind you of what God has done for you? Have you thought about deep enough the things that God has done for you, the blessings that God has given you, to where you would want to put something in your mind to when you think on that, you always remember what God did for you? I have two. They're pretty easy. All right. One of them is a church camp. I don't have a memento from there, but I do have something from there that I keep with me and will always be with me for eternity. There is a church camp called the Wilds. It's in North Carolina. It's actually in Transylvania County, North Carolina, which is kind of an interesting place. All right. But there is a church camp there that I went to when I was 12 years old, and I can tell you exactly the place where I was sitting in the auditorium as the preacher was preaching when I felt the Holy Spirit knocking on the door of my heart saying, Jamie, you have not accepted Jesus as your personal Savior. And this is a 12-year-old, is somebody I went to church for the first time in diapers. I went to Christian school for elementary school and junior high. All right? I knew all of the stuff. And at 12 years old, I have a memorial in my mind. I have a marker in my mind of where and when I accepted Jesus Christ. I know exactly in the room where I was sitting. I can't tell you exactly who was preaching. I don't remember what the message was about, but I know exactly in that room where I was sitting. When I finally said, I know that I have never personally accepted Jesus, and I'm going to fix that right now. And I did. And I was saved at the Wilds Camp in North Carolina when I was 12 years old. That is a marker, a memorial in my mind that is there every time I think of the Wilds. And I remember the most random things about this camp. So they had these things called birdhouses. And the birdhouses were what you slept in, and they really looked like birdhouses. They had the walls kind of angled out like this, and they had roofs on them. You went in there, and the bunks were built into the wall, and so you put 4 people in a birdhouse. Why do I remember this? I have no idea. But you slept in birdhouses. And it was the first time I had ever played volleyball with the giant beach ball. I think we have one of them here that's in canvas, and it weighs like a bunch. And if you're the only one underneath it, it'll take you to the ground. All right, but it's a giant volleyball that you play with all together. I don't know why I remember that, but the first time I ever saw one of those, play with those, was at the Wilds. But the most important thing from the Wilds is I remember that is where I accepted Christ. Okay? I have another memorial that I carry with me and I wear every day. And for 22 years, it has never come off of my hand. And it's right there. I have a gold band that I wear on my hand every day and have for 22 years. It is a memorial to me to be reminded of an oath I took when I stood in front of God, and a vow that I made to love, honor, and cherish my wife as long as I live. I have memorials in my life that remind me of the things that God did for me. And in those 2 cases, both of those things are things that God did for me. God gave me salvation, and God gave me my wife. God has taken care of me and fully takes care of me in the same way that He fully took care of the Israelites when they crossed over the River Jordan and walked across on dry ground. So I go back to my question. What is your memorial? What is your thing in your life where you have put something down and said, God, thank you for this. I will never forget it. God, thank you for this. I will never forget it. I gave you 2 examples, 2 big ones. You guys haven't had a chance to get married yet. It's coming. All right? I gave you 2 big ones in my life. There are tons of other ones. All right? This one was just easy because, this doesn't come off. It stays here. This is my memorial. It's all it says to show to you. All right? It's there. What is your memorial? And if you don't have one, think on your relationship with God and think back to that word that says where Joshua told the children of Israel to consecrate themselves before they got ready to see God work. Are you in the right relationship with God where you can see Him? Are you in the right relationship with God where you can hear Him? Are you in that right relationship with God where you can feel His presence around you and you know the things that happen in your life are not by chance, they're by design, because God is the one doing them? My challenge to you is find your memorial. Find your stone. Find your thing that you carry out of the River Jordan like these 12 men did to build a memorial for all of the Israelites. Find your stone. Find your memorial. And when you think on it, thank God for what He's done for you. When you think on it, thank God for the blessings. Thank God for the protections. Thank God for the opportunity that you have to share His love with somebody else. To share what God did for you with somebody else. And if you do that, it'll help to keep you in that right frame of mind of understanding your relationship with God. So that when you get a command from God, you're ready to act on that command. You stay in the right relationship and then you thank God for the outcome. Just like the Israelites. They took a command, they consecrated themselves, they walked across on dry land, then they built an altar to God. Those steps are the same steps that we're called to do today. It doesn't matter that these are Old Testament. We live in the New Testament age. The commands are still the same. Listen, prepare, go, and remember what is there for you. And thank God that He is there with you as a part of it. Let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you so much for this night, Lord. We thank you for the opportunity we have to be in your house. Lord, I pray that we would keep ourselves in the right relationship with you, Lord, where we can hear from you, where we can see you when you do things in our lives, Lord, that we would know it's not by chance, it's by design. It is what you have allowed to happen or caused to happen in our lives, Lord, and we're to thank you for those opportunities. Lord, I pray that we would stay in that right relationship, and we would see you work, and that when we see it, Lord, that we would build a memorial to remember it and to thank you for taking care of us with whatever it is that we're going through. Lord, again, I thank you for this opportunity to meet together tonight in your house. I pray that everything that we have done has been honorable and pleasing to you tonight. Lord, I pray that you would keep these teenagers safe, Lord, as they go out into the world, as they go to school. I pray a hedge of protection around them, Lord, that you would keep them safe from this virus. Lord, I pray that you would keep all of us safe until we meet together again. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, that's it. Bye, everybody.